an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering the Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, chapters 26, 27, and 28. In these chapters, it's pretty slow chapters. Not a lot happens. Nobody gets shot. Nothing happens to anyone, like a hanging. It's all just everybody having a picnic and a nice time. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Welcome to Unspoiled.
Are you coming to the tree? They strung up a man, they say, who murdered 3. Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you coming to the tree where a dead man called out for his love to flee? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you?
Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Rashawn.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are some things that happened.
They sure are
Yeah.
things that happened.
Thanks for joining our podcast. See you next week.
Oh my God. Y'all, this, it's really funny how slow moving this book felt to me when I first read it. And now going back over it with you, I'm like, oh, that's happening already?
Mm-hmm.
I keep being surprised at how fast things feel like they're moving, and they aren't actually. But how did you feel about this?
I couldn't believe that something this significant happened, and then we have a chapter and an epilogue, and that's all we have left. This feels like such a progression, such an escalation of the plot that, and there's another book, right?
After this one?
Yeah.
No.
There's not another. I thought that I read somewhere that there was a second book.
She's writing another prequel, but that one's about Haymitch.
That's what I'm getting confused. Okay. Right. So, yeah, we have this escalation, and then boom, the story is pretty much done here. I was shocked by it. What did I think? I was really angry and also somehow resigned, if that makes any sense. I writing. I
feel like that's sort of where you live, is it not?
Yeah, you're fair. Fucking fair. But, the writing was on the wall with Sejanus. The betrayal of Corio was so textbook for him, even though while I was reading it, I was like, I can't believe this motherfucker is doing this. But also, I could believe this motherfucker was doing this. Both of those thoughts were happening at the same time. The last bit is just brutal. And then the being in Corio's POV is for this long. I feel like I've been poisoned. Do I sound crazy?
No, explain what you mean here.
He's so incredibly, I know we overuse this word. Everybody overuses this word. But he's so toxic, and he's such a narcissist. And we've spent so much time in his head that, I'll find myself being like, oh, well, he's kind of making sense here. Why would you want to risk yourself? And then I'll have to be like, wait a minute. That's the danger of a POV, and we've talked about this across several properties that we've covered, that you can almost end up over identifying with the person who's telling you the story, because if you're our capacity for empathy is actually so great, that, and it's so, well, some of us, it's so great, and you want to, I do anyway, want to understand. I want to get, like, why a person is the way they are, and I want to understand, like, why are they doing the things that they do. I want to find, like, something to hold on to that says that this person is also human. Like, I'm, like, searching desperately for the spark of humanity within almost every character that I encounter. And those are going to be the ones that are the most interesting as well. The ones that can be despicable, and yet you find yourself having empathy for them. And Coriolanus is just so completely calculating, even when he doesn't mean to be. It's like he can't turn it off.
Yeah.
And he's so self-serving, and I get that he's got the trauma, and he's got the unresolved shit with his dad, and the shame of being poor, and his name being denigrated, and all of that shit. But my God, what just a straight up awful human being he is. He just really is, you guys. He's like, I'm always looking for redemption, right? What is redeemable about this character? There's got to be something in there. And y'all, I don't know, because every time he's with Lucy Gray, his every reaction with Lucy Gray, the interaction itself can look like one thing, but the minute you are in his head and you find out what he's thinking about the interaction, turns it on its head. He can take the sweetest moment, the most pure, vulnerable moment, and he can twist it into something so ugly.
Yeah. Because
he's so insecure, and he's so, I don't even know what other adjectives I want to use for him. He's so many things. Yeah. What a just a resoundingly disgusting little person he is.
Little person. Indeed.
Yeah, he's just a small man. He's small. And it's so funny because he pictures for himself, and we know that he's going to reach great heights and amass incredible power. We know that he's going to be wildly successful in his endeavors, and it just gets my goat, because if I didn't know about the original trilogy, I would be praying and wanting and willing and wishing for his downfall. And I know that he lives a long, prosperous, powerful life and doesn't meet his end until he's a much, much older man. And that just galls the fuck out of me.
Agreed. Yeah, this is the thing with fucking prequels, man. Like, I understand the urge, but sometimes I'm like, So, all right, let's start off with chapter 26. Coriolanus is reporting back to Sejanus on the fact that his test, he thinks, went pretty well.
Mm-hmm. He's still salty about that money he found, so he's being all like weird and cagey about Sejanus.
He says, so supportive, so duplicitous, so self-destructive, like a moth to a flame.
Yeah.
Why is he saying, like, is the moth is Sejanus and the flame is the rebellion? I guess.
So I thought about this turn of phrase when Highbottom says it to Corio originally, talking about his parents.
Right.
Right. And I wasn't sure what it meant. And the fact that it pops back up in this moment, it's got me thinking of a couple of different possibilities. So, like, and I want to mention the thing that Corio thinks about in this moment is one that didn't come up the first time, is the plural, like moths to a flame, which is what Dean Highbottom had said. So it could be that it's not that Sejanus is the moth and the flame is just the self-sabotage, the self-destructive tendencies that he has because he's very uncomfortable with his station in life and doesn't think he deserves the privilege that he has by way of his father.
Right.
And that Sejanus cannot help but be drawn to things that are going to destroy him.
Yeah.
But also, I think Coriolanus thinks that, and this is a bigger conversation, like, there's something about humans as a whole that are drawn to their own self-destruction, like moths to a flame. That if they are not controlled, and this comes up later when he has that conversation with Lucy Gray about what he really thinks of humanity, which is much more in line with what he talked about with Dr. Gall than is not aligned with Lucy Gray at all. That there's this idea that human beings left to their own devices will go to the flame every time. We will, because we can't control ourselves. We don't have self-discipline. We need iron fists to rule us, to keep us from our more baser, our desires or urges or whatever he thinks the little, lowborn people will get up to. Yeah, so that's my take on that.
Okay, that makes sense. So he's going off and he does some guard duty. He's thinking about Lucy and feeling quite trapped and is thinking about her like, I miss her. But then he starts to be like, well, maybe Billy Tope's trying to worm his way back in. And I was just like, Jesus
guy
Christ.
is so tiresome with this fucking insecurity and this jealousy that is all about possession and not about true love at all. It's all about ownership. Ugh.
Indeed. He writes a thank you note to Ma, and then asks Pluribus about getting guitar strings and goes to sleep. And he's wondering, like, when the fuck is it not going to be disgusting outside? And I have got news for you, buddy. It'll be a little bit. The onion chopping that he is assigned to is less than ideal. He does not care about this or care for this, and he really doesn't enjoy thinking that he's going to stink of onions when he sees Lucy Gray again. As somebody who cooks a lot with onions, I carried that with me. I know that I do.
I feel like this is actually like this moment of him worried about how he's going to smell, and when it seems like really innocent when he's talking about meeting Lucy later, and I hope I don't stink of onions, because that's just like a very normal, natural thing to think, right? Nobody wants to like stink of any. No one wants to stink. Period. One would hope. But it made me think about how his whole thing with like roses covering up the like how obsessed he is with smelling good and smelling like roses all the time that cover up his weird mouth sore situation. But just the idea of not smelling good is just not something that Coriolanus could tolerate. Like, he just simply would not abide it,
Yeah.
So I really laughed that was his chore for the day. It's cutting up onions. Goddamn right, you're chopping up those onions.
And he has a heat rash, and he goes to the doctor, who gives him some powder and tells him to keep it dry, to which Coriolanus is like, lol. Sure. And then they have to go back to the woods and work with these birds, catching them again. And he's trying to like avoid the attention of Dr. K, but she just comes right up to him and begins a conversation. And she asks whether he's like liking 12, and he says he's learned a lot. And Coriolanus says, because he's like feeling very humiliated at being here after everything. But then she admits that she headed the Jabberjay project, which is a massive failure. And that is very embarrassing. And it sets him a lot more at ease with her.
Yeah. Once he discovers that she had an even greater humiliation than his own, he can feel, I don't know if superior is the right word, but he doesn't feel as insecure or inferior once he realizes that she had an even greater failing.
Yeah.
Which, again, just really tells you what kind of person this is. When she calls him out by name, he's mortified. You know, and decides to, as he puts it, own it, like Lucy Gray had advised back in the Monkey House. Just own this moment and pretend like, oh, I don't care that you know who I am. It's no big deal. Who were you for me to care that you know who I am?
Yeah. It was just very interesting because, like, I think we all understand the feeling of not wanting to be around somebody who feels like they're so perfect when we have a fuck up that they're aware of. But the difference in the way it feels, the extremity of it for him, I think is, you know, it's just really telling. So they talk a little bit about how this works, and she shows him the neutral mode in which this Jabberjay just repeats whatever was just said. But then she puts him into record mode.
Yeah.
And Coriolanus thinks nothing has happened, and he's continuing to talk with her. And she finally presses the button again, and it repeats everything that they said while he thought it wasn't working. And it's, you know, pretty big foreshadowing. Like,
yeah.
You know, you get to this and you're like, okay, well, this is definitely going to be used for something at some point. And he's asking about, like, why didn't you just put microphones around? And she said that the rebels were like really going place to place in the forest. There was no set area. And if you place them somewhere, they can find them and destroy them, of course. And, there's all kinds of like downsides to that.
Yeah.
But in theory, these were perfect. And in practice,
not so much.
Yeah.
I love that they don't really understand why it failed. Like, they don't know for certain how the rebels got hip to what the Jabberjays were. She's got a couple theories. Maybe they planted some info and then the Capitol acted on it and it proved where, like, the intel was coming from. Or maybe there was a spy on the base. You know, they don't really know. And he is like, well, why don't you just use the homing device to just call them all back to the base? And we find out that whole sort of infrastructure is gone now. And there's no way to do that.
Yeah, so he's like also has a soft spot for them because they were her project. She doesn't want to lose them. And she's saying that she released them into the wild in neutral. They not only survived, but mated successfully. So now we have a whole new species. What can they do? Not sure. I've been watching them for the last few days. They've no ability to mimic speech, but they have a better, more sustained ability to repeat music than their mothers. And he sings the fucking Panem anthem. And the Mockingjay sings it back. And he immediately says we should kill them all. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Kill them all? Why? Said Dr. K in surprise. They're unnatural. He tried to twist the comment so it sounded like it came from a bird lover. Perhaps they'll hurt the other species. They appear to be rather compatible. And it's weird. It's described as the words slipped out and that he has to twist them to seem like it's a thing, but it doesn't seem like he himself understands why he's having such a strong reaction.
Listen, I also had a strong reaction. This is one of those moments when I was like, I get it. Like, Oh, the Mockingjays. They're unnatural. We should kill them all.
Yep.
Okay.
I agree.
Like, I'm going to be very honest. This particular bit, this bit here with the Mockingjays and his visceral reaction to them and you were saying he doesn't really seem to understand, like, why.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you were going to follow that up with a theory of your own, but I would suggest that he doesn't know why, because this is nonsense.
Yes, ma'am. That is exactly my opinion on it.
Okay, thank you.
And when I talk about like not really liking prequels a lot, it's things like this that often grate on me the most, because I understand that the point of a prequel is to flesh out a world that people have grown to love, give them more, have them understand more deeply. But it does have a tendency towards, like, I'm going to put a little Easter egg here. I'm going to put a little, like, and there are ways to do that I think are fun and, if not subtle, at least don't make you feel like the author thinks you're an idiot.
Yeah. Like,
but
it says he didn't mind the Jabberjays so much. They seemed interesting from a military standpoint. But something about the Mockingjays repelled him. He distrusted their spontaneous creation, nature running amok. They should die out, and die out soon. I beg your finest pardon.
It's supposed to be. He's a control freak, and he doesn't like the fact that something was able to come out of the ether from this project that wasn't intentional, and that, like, what they can do is sort of still an unknown. I get it, but it just feels really weak. It feels like a retroactively created reason.
Yep.
Because we are trying to shoehorn in this thing here. So, yeah, I agree.
I felt the same. But it moves past this in to finish out their day, and they're having trouble capturing the Mockingjays, by the way. The Mockingjays are not falling for these traps one bit. The Jabberjays are. They're just walking right into those bitches. Mockingjays, not so much. And Dr. K is like, well, if we can't get them in the cages, we're going to pull out the nets. To which Coriolanus thinks to himself, or the guns, because we're just going to really beat that horse. And then they go back to the base, and they're unloading the cages and putting, like, the birds where they need to be. And this is so cute because is this when Bug is worried about? I mean, it might be later when Bug is worried about what's going to happen to them later, but that was a very cute moment. And Dr. K asked Bug if he would like to take care of the birds until they all leave to go back to the capital. And he is really all about this. He's been scrambling up those trees, loading traps, unloading traps. This is like the best detail he's ever been given. So I enjoyed that for him.
Yeah, agreed. So finally, there's they get to the weekend. There's a hailstorm. It says, on the way to breakfast, the bunkmates pelted each other with ice balls the size of oranges. And I was like, so you threw rocks at each other.
That's
like,
what it said.
People talk about throwing, like, I've read this in other books, and I'm just like, have you ever experienced, like, throwing this at somebody is fucked up. This isn't like,
it's super unpleasant to be, like, nailed with, like, it's not even a snowball. These are just, like, chunks of ice.
Yeah.
There's nothing fun about that.
Here it is. All appeared to have retained the ability to record and play the human voice. Bug shook his head. Is that good for them? I don't know. It's what they're built to do, said Coriolanus. They'd be happier if we just left them in the woods, said Bug. Coriolanus wasn't sure Bug was right. For all he knew, they'd wake up in the Citadel lab in a few days, wondering what that atrocious 10-year nightmare in District 12 had been. Maybe they'd be happier in a controlled environment where so many threats had been removed. Again, just his obsession with control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure he does think that way.
And then...
Oh, go ahead.
I just did this, like, I recorded with Miles before this, and we were doing this so much with each other. As he decided to keep his romance secret, he planned to slip away once they'd arrived at the Hob. That left the problem of Sejanus. He lied about the money, but maybe he was just trying to fit in with the rest of his penniless bunkmates. After the incident with the map, he'd seemed genuinely contrite, so hopefully he'd recognized the danger of acting as a go-between with Lil. But would Billy Tope or the rebels try to approach him again since he'd initially expressed a willingness to help them? He was such a sitting duck. The easiest thing would be to take him along to see the covey once they'd given the others the slip. So Corio invites him backstage and is like, yeah, we've got to shake everybody else, which does not prove difficult. And the performance is going to be held in this like old garage. They entered and found the covey had commandeered the space. Maud Ivory ran over, and I love this. He gives her a popcorn ball, and she says, "Thank you kindly," which I just love a little girl saying "thank you kindly." I don't know why, but that was just charming to me.
Mm-hmm. I love that Corio it comments on that. He says, it was funny how society talk of the capital seemed natural with the covey.
Yeah. And she says, I can't say your name because you're a secret. I love it. I'm just trying to get some happy in her head. How about my head? Teased Lucy Gray. Coriolanus leaned over and kissed her. Okay, that's a start. She scooted over and patted the desk beside her. What's this place? Right now it's our break room. We come here before and after the show and when we go off stage between numbers. But who owns it? Lucy Gray seemed unconcerned. No idea. We'll just perch here until they shoo us off. Birds. Always birds with her when it came to the covey. Singing, perching, feathers in their hats. Pretty birds all. He told her about his assignment with the Jabberjays, thinking she might be impressed that they'd been singled out to work with them, but it only seemed to make her sad. I hate to think of them caged up when they've had a taste of freedom. What do they expect to find back in their labs? I don't know if their weapons still work. Sounds like torture, having someone controlling your voice like that. Coriolanus thought that a bit dramatic, but tried to sound comforting. I don't think there's a human equivalent. Really? Do you always feel free to speak your mind, Coriolanus Snow? Free to speak his mind? Of course he did. Well, within reason. He didn't go around shooting his mouth off about every little thing. What did she mean? She meant what he thought about the capital, about the Hunger Games and the districts. The truth was, most of what the capital did, he supported, and the rest rarely concerned him. But if it came to it, he'd speak out. Wouldn't he? Against the capital? Like Sejanus had? Even if it meant repercussions? He didn't know, but he felt on the defensive. I do. I think you should say what you think. That's what my daddy thought too, and he ended up with more bullet holes than I could count on my fingers.
Here he go. What was she implying? Even if she didn't say it, I bet those bullets came from a peacekeeper's gun. Perhaps from somebody dressed exactly like me. So he spouts back, and my father was killed by a rebel sniper. And she's just like, ugh. And now you're all fucking pissy about it. Now you're mad. And he tries to pretend that he's not, but he absolutely is. And starts, I'm just tired. I've been looking forward to seeing you all week. I'm sorry about your dad. I'm sorry about my father. But I don't run Panem. Sir. He cannot sit with, and it's difficult, right? To sit with dissonance. You know, that makes us very uncomfortable. And I think this is going to sound so awful. Coriolanus Snow in this book doesn't understand completely what a total piece of shit he is. Right?
Yeah.
He's a complete piece of shit at this point now. But he doesn't know it yet. And I say it because I think that he gets to a point in his life by the time we meet him as President Snow that he is aware, but has justified it with lots of, whatever the fuck. And also has grown accustomed to being in power and has decided that in order to maintain power, anything he does is acceptable, which is why he poisons people and whatever.
Right.
But this young Coriolanus still thinks that he is a good person. Like, that he is a moral person, that he is on the side of right, which is why he gets so, like, I would speak up. I would say something if they did something that was really, really wrong. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't I? No, you wouldn't. But he is not yet prepared to, and I mean, I don't know how, as a person who is not a piece of shit, I like to think, I don't know exactly when that happens for a person where they're just like, oh man, I suck.
Yeah.
Oh well. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Oh God.
I don't know exactly how that process works for people. But he hasn't gotten to the oh well just yet.
No.
And it's fascinating to watch him be so convinced that I'm a nice guy. Mm-hmm. I'm such a nice guy. You're not, though. You're not a nice guy at all.
No.
Like,
unless we're using the derogatory nice guy.
Yeah. In that sense, he's absolutely a fucking nice guy to him. Ugh, he's so gross. So he's feeling all like defensive and insulted, and they get interrupted because it's time for the covey to perform, and Lucy Gray has to leave. And as they part, Coriolanus is just like, "We'll have a good show," and she wants to know if, "Will I see you after? I have to go back for curfew," and it's just so curt.
He's being such a sulky brat.
He is. He really is. And she is just like, all right, well, and then she invites him on a trip to the lake tomorrow. Like, she is understanding that he is in his feelings in this moment, but she's still gracious enough to be like, well, tomorrow, hopefully when you get over yourself, if you want to join us, we're all going to the lake. I'd love to have you. And immediately he wants to go. He knows he wants to go. It's a chance to spend a whole day with her. He absolutely wants that shit. But he's still in his feelings. And he's still upset. And he knows that it's not making any sense. And yet, she has thrown him off his axis.
Yeah.
And it takes him a minute to recover. And he seems genuinely confused. And at one point, he's like, the conversation just got off track. That's all. It was all the fucking stupid bird's fault.
Enough with the birds already.
Nope. They're about to bang our heads with that.
Yeah. It's really interesting to me that she's like not telling him anything that he doesn't know about being able to speak your mind and the danger of that. Like, he has seen what happens, and yet he's acting like, well, what is it that she's trying to say? I think she said it, but okay. Yeah. Whatever, dude.
But she can't really mean it. He must be misunderstanding her, or she must have it wrong because it contradicts his own values. Mm-hmm. So he's just going to pretend that there's some kind of misunderstanding on either his part or her part, This can't be what she really feels because it's so at odds at what he really feels.
Yeah. So there's the show. He starts drinking. It's him trying to like get over being angry, and eventually he sort of does and loosens up a little bit. And he gets his song from Maud Ivory. Oft I had heard of Lucy Gray, and when I crossed the wild, I chanced to see at break of day the solitary child. No mate, no comrade, Lucy knew. She dwelt where none abide, the sweetest thing that ever grew upon the mountainside. You yet may spy the fawn at play, the hare among the green, but the sweet face of Lucy Gray will never more be seen. Tonight will be a stormy night. You to the town must go, and take a lantern, child, to light your mother through the snow. That, father, will I gladly do. 'Tis scarcely afternoon. The village clock has just struck 2, and yonder is the moon. At this the father turned his hook to kindling for the day. He plied his work, and Lucy took the lantern on her way. As carefree as a mountain doe, fresh new paths she broke. Her feet dispersed the powdery snow that rose up just like smoke. The storm came on before its time. She wandered up and down, and many a hill did Lucy climb, but never reached the town. The way this is interspersed with his interpretation, a lot of nonsense words, but she got lost in the snow. Well, no wonder if they sent her out into a snowstorm, and she probably froze to death.
Oh my God.
The wretched parents all that night went shouting far and wide, but there was neither sound nor sight to serve them as a guide. At daybreak on a hill they stood that overlooked the scene, and thence they saw the bridge of wood that spanned a deep ravine. They wept and turning homeward cried, "In heaven we all shall meet," when in the snow the mother spied the print of Lucy's feet.
Oh, good.
Again,
they found her footprints.
I swear
Happy
ending. Then downward from the steep hill's edge, they tracked the footmarks small, and through the broken hawthorn hedge, and by the long stone wall. And then an open field they crossed. The marks were still the same. They tracked them on, not ever lost, and to the bridge they came. They followed from the snowy bank those footmarks one by one, and to the middle of the plank, and further there were none. Wait, what? She vanished into thin air? Yet some maintain that to this day she is a living child, that you may see sweet Lucy Gray upon the lonesome wild. O'er rough and smooth she trips along, and never looks behind, and sings a solitary song that whistles in the wind. I know it's wind, but it doesn't rhyme otherwise, and it bothers me. So. And when he realizes it's a ghost story, he's just like, ugh.
Boo. You see, boos. So ridiculous. Well, he'd try hard to love it when he saw the covey tomorrow, but really, who names their child after a ghost girl? Although, if the girl was a ghost, where was her body? And then he says maybe she got tired of her negligent parents sending her into blizzards and ran off to live in the wild. And y'all...
Oh, God. It reminded him of the time he hadn't understood this poem in rhetoric class, and Livia Cardew had humiliated him in front of everyone. What a dreadful song. Maybe no one would mention it. No, they would. Maud Ivory would expect a response, so he'd say it was brilliant and leave it at that. What if she wanted to talk about it?
Oh my God, he is really going through it.
I swear.
Now, I'm not trying to pretend that I understand the song any better than he did, right? Mm-hmm. But it didn't make me nearly as infuriated as it made him. Like, no. He is upset about the song. Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be another moment of us understanding, first of all, his control impulses. This is a story without an answer. It's a story that hasn't got a real ending to it. Mm-hmm. And it's a story that's meant to force you to use your imagination. Mm-hmm. And he just doesn't like to do that.
Nope.
It's as simple as that. He wants an answer. Like, this is a song, and he's like, yeah, she probably died in the snow, you know? And then, like, they find her footprints. Oh, so she was alive. That's good. He's just being so literal. He just doesn't seem able to grasp this at all.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. He's trying to make this song make sense, like it's something that would be in one of his textbooks at school. You know,
Yeah.
Which is why that little line about being reminded of a time he got humiliated, because he just clearly struggles with this, you know, and struggled with this in school. So Olivia was able to like embarrass him, because he just is incapable of thinking. What do you call this kind of thinking when it's not like very literal? This is
Right brain.
Okay, we can go with that. Whatever it is,
I don't know if that's true.
He doesn't have it, right? He just doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
That part of his brain doesn't really open up, which is actually like on brand for him as a person.
Yes.
You know, he is not interested in metaphor and abstract thinking and you know, colorful imagery to tell a story. He wants this happened, and then this happened, and then that happened, and that's why that happened. The end.
Yeah.
You know, and is not interested in things that are left up to individual interpretation. He wants order. You know, he wants order. And there's no order to this song, just to most songs. There's a thing he does that's pretty funny. When he's thinking about, they found her footprints, it reminds him of another song Lucy Gray sings about a man that they had thought was frozen to death, and they tried to cremate him in an oven, but he thawed out and was fine. And I just was like, that made me laugh.
Something.
Say him something or the other. Yeah, that really, really made me laugh. Because he's trying, like his little brain wheels are spinning, trying to make sense of this, and he just simply cannot.
And I mean, it really links back to earlier when he's asked to sing something and all he's got is the fucking like anthem.
Yep.
You know, this is just a man who does not have imagination.
Yep.
So he turns to make a snide comment to Sejanus, and Sejanus is gone.
That was the one thing he was supposed to be doing, was watching Sejanus.
Yeah. So he goes and finds him outside and is like, what are you doing? And Sejanus tries to be like, I just had to take a piss. And he's like,
not buying it. Nobody's buying it. You should stop selling it.
Close that store down. Sunday dawned too brightly for Coriolanus' throbbing head. He threw up the white liquor and stood in the shower until his eyes focused properly again. The greasy eggs at the mess hall were unthinkable, and I was like, I don't know what to tell you, but I am into the greasy food when I have just had a night out of drinking.
Same.
I'm like, give me all the fat, give me all the carbs. I need it to soak it up.
Yep.
Please.
That's how you know this guy's a fucking amateur. But Sejanus is not only eating his own breakfast, he eats Coriolanus' breakfast too. And Corio is just like, more evidence that he in fact did not get all fucked up last night. That whole white liquor thing was a lie. And doesn't really want to deal with Sejanus, but he's like, you know what? I'm going to have to watch him like a hawk, so I'm going to invite him to go to the lake with me. And I need a companion anyway. And so Coriolanus, although his own enthusiasm had waned, Sejanus cheerfully accepted the invitation. Your own, like, dude, all you want is to spend time with her. And you have this one conversation that kind of upends you a little bit. And now the next morning you're just like, I guess I'll go to the lake to spend a free day with the woman that I profess to love more than anybody I've ever loved before in my life. I guess.
Yeah. This is, he's just so all over the place, man. Like, he's very consistent, really, but it's hard won. I guess, because he has to go through these like long self-talks, you know, of like, well, why? Well, it's just kind of in circles. So yeah, he brings them. They come to Lucy Gray, who doesn't seem to be like harboring any ill will from their little tiff the night before. And Tam Amber led the rest of them across the meadow and into the woods. Clerk Carmine, Maud Ivory, and Sejanus formed a line behind him, leaving Lucy Gray and Coriolanus to bring up the rear. There was no path. They followed single file, stepping over fallen trees, pushing aside branches, trying to skirt the prickly bushes that popped up in the undergrowth. Within 10 minutes, nothing remained of District 12 but the acrid smell from the mines. Within 20, even that had been cloaked by vegetation. The canopy of trees provided shade from the sun, but little respite from the heat. The hum of insects, chatter of squirrels, and birdsong filled the air, undisturbed by their presence. Even with 2 days of bird duty under his belt, Coriolanus felt increasingly wary the farther away they got from what passed for civilization out here. He wondered what other creatures, larger, more powerful, and fanged, might be lurking in the trees. He had no weapon of any kind. After that realization, he pretended to need a walking stick and stopped a moment to strip a sturdy fallen branch of its excess limbs. So, yeah, again,
little bit of a bitch. But yeah, it is about control. Like, he's in an environment that he doesn't recognize. He realizes that, I think, even though it's not really said, I think it's got to be clear to him that without the Covey leading him, he would be completely lost in these woods. Like, he is at their mercy. You know, if they decided to, I don't know, fucking just all make a break for it and leave him stranded, he wouldn't know what the fuck to do. And that makes him feel away. And so what he does is he doesn't vocalize because he's thinking to himself, but it feels like he's telling himself, oh, I'm worried about what other creatures are out here. But I don't think that's really what the fear is. I think the fear is something else. And it's how dependent he is on these people for getting him where he's going. And then later getting him back home. Like, he doesn't have any control in this situation. Like, he can't be the leader of this group because he doesn't know how to get where they're going. He can't be in charge. You know, he has to fall back and follow these people who he doesn't really even have a good estimation of. He doesn't really hold them in a, you know, he doesn't have a great deal of respect for them, it seems.
Yeah.
And he's like wholly dependent on following them to get to this lake and then getting back home.
Yeah. It's almost like we're hammering this a little too much at this point. I don't know if that's just me feeling this way, but she's just writing so much of him with the control freak thing in so many different settings that I can't help but feel like, couldn't we have cut some of this? Like, I get what you're doing, and I feel like it has been very clear. We don't need to be walked through it over and over again the way it feels like we are. And she, like, at one point they decide to carry Maud because she's getting blisters from these shoes that don't fit, and she starts singing, and Coriolanus gets really irritated because a Mockingjay starts like repeating the song. So he distracts her by talking about the song from the last night, and she asks what he thinks of it, and he doesn't even want to like talk about it. Yeah. And finally she's just like, well, I think they really see her, because how else can she not make footprints? I think she flies around. And Coriolanus is asking, like, well, then, like, where's her body if she's actually dead? She fell off the bridge and died, only it's so far down no one could see her. Or maybe there was a river and it washed her away.
I love that it says once Maud forces this conversation, because you're right, he does try to dodge. He's like, oh, the song was great. You were fantastic. And she's like, yeah, that's awesome. But what did you think about the song, though? Like, what do you think is going on? And it says that he felt better that the cryptid song was at least subject to debate, and it wasn't that he was too dim to grasp the one interpretation. So he's feeling like all insecure and like a dummy because he doesn't get the song. And then when he discovers that no, it's like open, there is no right answer, right? Then suddenly he feels better, and is feeling like more like himself, I guess. I can't think of a better way to say it, but it was really putting him out of sorts, this song, and not being able to decipher it was causing him a lot of like internal dismay, distress, and getting confirmation that, oh no, everybody has their own theories. He's just like, oh, thank God it's not me. I'm not an idiot. When literally nobody was calling you an idiot in the first place, sir.
Nobody was judging you on this, my guy. It's just he's so busy judging everybody, he assumes it's happening to him too. So they swim, and he really starts to like calm down. The swimming is nice. They get out and build a fire, and it says he felt happier to be alive than he had in weeks. And finally, she brings up their argument and is like, I didn't mean to upset you. And he says, I can't pretend I'm someone I'm not. I don't agree with everything the Capitol does, but I am Capitol. And on the whole, I think we are right about needing order. The Covey believe you're put on Earth to reduce misery, not to add to it. Do you think the Hunger Games are right? I'm not even sure why we do them, to be honest. But I do think people are forgetting the war too fast, what we did to each other, what we're capable of. We're just trying to keep things under control. Otherwise, there'd be chaos and people running around killing each other like in the arena. That's what you think people would do? I do. Unless there's law and someone enforcing it, I think we might as well be animals. Like it or not, the Capitol is the only thing keeping anyone safe. So they keep me safe. And what do I give up for that? Give up? Why, nothing.
The nerve of him thinking that it doesn't cost anything. What do you even mean?
She was almost dead. What are you talking about? The Covey can't travel, can't perform without their say-so, can only sing certain types of songs, fight getting round up and you get shot dead, like my daddy, try to keep your family together and you get your head broken, like my mama. What if I think that price is too high to pay? Maybe my freedom's worth the risk. So your family were rebels, after all. My family were Covey, first and last. Not district, not capital, not rebel, not peacekeeper, just us. And you're like us. You want to think for yourself. You push back. I know because of what you did for me in the games. The thing is, it's like you get why she comes to this conclusion.
Right.
But the motivation is wrong.
Yep.
It's so weird how this works out.
Yep.
And
he's like, well, she's got me there.
Yeah. And I'm
Does she? Does she have you there?
I don't feel like she do.
Yeah. It's a real moment of being reminded that there's no way for her to know what type of person he really is because she's only ever seen him in such specific circumstances. And she had been at such a disadvantage for most of their time together while she was, in the Capitol for the games. And he did help save her life. But so from her point of view,
What?
You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
That's so weird. My whole Chrome went white. It was weird.
That's weird.
It's super weird. I've never seen that before. Okay. So from her POV, he did break rules and go out of his way to keep her alive and get her food even before she was in the game, when she was at the zoo. But she doesn't know anything about his internal motivation. She doesn't know the way his brain works. She doesn't know. I don't even know if she knows about the prize that he was working towards, that he was going to win at school. And You know, like I don't even know for sure how much of that she's aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem like they've had a lot of talks about that. So then we have them discovering some Katniss, talking about cooking it up. We cook some fish. We cook some fish, and then Sejanus brings out a half dozen of the sugar cookies from Ma. And they sit back a little bit talking about the colors that they each represent. And he's just realizing sort of the color theme that they're going for.
Yeah, like he's me last podcast.
Your name sounds Covey. How so? Because of the snow part. White as snow. Snow White. Is there a ballad with Coriolanus in it? Not that I know of. Why don't you write one about me? The Ballad of Coriolanus Snow. Lucy Gray is the writer. Why don't you ask her? Stop pestering him, you. You should probably take a nap before we head home. People will carry me and I'll sing for them. And she starts and Clerk says, oh, pipe down. So this is when she asks Lucy to sing the one that she sang to her when she got sick. And it's the same song that Katniss sang when Rue died. And Corio is just sort of like existing in the moment, actually happy and appreciating the nature around him in a way that is just so like infrequent for him.
This whole piece here, what if this was his life? Rising whenever, catching his food for the day, and hanging out with Lucy Gray by the lake. Who needed wealth and success and power when they had love? Didn't it conquer all? Yeah, I'm not even sure how. That's like when you get like all hopped up and you start having like weed thoughts, you know? You know what I mean? That's, you know, he's got a full belly. He's tired from swimming. He's relaxing in the shade and feeling good. And he starts having these completely not based in reality thoughts of what his life could be, you know?
So we have some more talk about the Mockingjays breeding, co-opting capital technology unchecked, unauthorized. And then Clerk Carmine comes over and he has a feather and says, don't tell her where it came from. Okay, that's sweet, Cece. She'll love it. I worry about him. He misses Billy Tope. Do you? No, not since the reaping. What did it mean when you said you were the bet he lost in the reaping? He bet he could have us both, me and Mayfair. It was a gamble. Mayfair found out about me. I found out about her. She had her pa call my name in the reaping. I don't know what she told him. Certainly not that Billy Tope was her flame. Something else. We're outsiders here, so it's easy to lie about us. I'm surprised they're together. Well, Billy Tope's always going on about how he's happiest alone, but what he really wants is some girl to take care of him. I guess Mayfair seemed a likely candidate for the job, so we went after her. No one can pour on the charm like Billy Tope. That girl didn't stand a chance. Besides, she's got to be lonely. No brothers or sisters, no friends. Miners hate her family, driving up in their flashy car to watch the hangings. People are suspicious of us, but they despise them.
Yeah, I enjoyed this little bit because I hadn't really thought about Mayfair in that way. You know, what the times we've seen her, she's, you know, been very, very unpleasant. The idea that she rigged the reaping to get Lucy Gray called, like there's nothing about her that encourages any sort of sympathy, you know? And then we have Lucy Gray talking about what she imagines Mayfair's life is like. And it does sound awful. It does sound really lonely, isolating, Not that these are excuses for her behavior, but it just the fact that Lucy Gray has it in her to even take a second to consider any of this, you know? Like when really after what this girl has done, or at least after what Lucy Gray believes this girl has done, like she would be completely justified to be like, fuck that bitch, it's on site. And that's it, you know?
Yeah. She brings up the fact that Billy Tope asked her to run away with him. And this sends Coriolanus into a tailspin. And it's really funny to me because, like, my assumption is her bringing it up means it's nothing. You know, like, I just fully think if somebody is telling you either they're trying to get a rise out of you or it's nothing to worry about. And it's very clear she's not playing games like that. So this is nothing to worry about. And yet he determines the very fact that she spoke to Billy Tope at all is some kind of in and of itself a break in trust.
Yep.
He
thought she'd banished Billy Tope, and here she was casually telling him about some chance meeting in a meadow. Only it hadn't even been chance at all. He'd known where to find her. How long had they been there? With him pouring on the charm, tempting her to run away. Why had she stayed to listen? And I think, is it Snow who says trust is important?
Yes.
Right?
She says it's more important than love, but yeah, he's the one who starts off with it.
And then she says, you know, she tells Coriolanus that she trusts him, which is a big fucking deal. It's like more important than being like, I love you.
Yeah.
You know, and he gets it. He gets that this was really tough for her to say. And yet it doesn't erase the image of Billy Tope for Coriolanus. So he says, why? Which is, someone opens up and tells you something as deep and significant as I trust you. And then the person says, why? That's not necessarily a bad reaction. It's not the one I would want to get. You know?
It depends on the type of conversation you're having.
For the type of conversation that they are having, I don't know. I guess, like, I don't know. I didn't like it. I just didn't like it.
I will agree with you on that. But I do, like, there have been a couple times where Owen says, I love you. And I said, why? And I challenge him to, like, give me something. Give me a reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is not that vibe. And her response is, why? Well, I'll have to give that one some thought. When she kissed him, he kissed her back, but without much conviction. These new developments upset him. Maybe it was a mistake to be getting so attached to her. And something else bothered him too. It was the song she'd been playing in the meadow that first day. About the hanging, he'd thought then, but it had mentioned meeting up at the hanging tree as well. If that was their old place, why was she still singing about it? Maybe she was only using him to get Billy Tope back, playing the two of them off each other.
I'm so tired, dude. You gotta get it together. You have got to get a hold of yourself. This is so fucking tiresome.
Yeah. It's just like, for me, also just deeply illogical. If she is using you to get Billy Tope back, Billy Tope came to her home. And she asked you to stay and told him to get the fuck out. What are you talking about? What?
She's met Billy Tope in the meadow. He has tried to get her to run away, and yet she's still spending the day with you at the lake with her family. Like this. What else do you want? I mean, we know what he wants. He wants her to not have anything to do with Billy at all. Like to not say his name, not ever run into him. And anything short of that is going to not be enough for him. And then he does this thing with Maud Ivory where he volunteers to carry her so he can have some like quiet time alone with her, and then starts to kind of basically grill her about Billy.
Yeah.
So if you seeing him these days? What are we doing, sir? This is what? But she's just like, nah, we don't fuck with him no more. He's not one of us, period.
Yeah.
And that makes him happy, but also bothers him because it suggests in his mind that Lucy Gray must have kept the fact that she met Billy from the rest of the covey, which Coriolanus deems suspicious. And
there's
then,
nothing he see as suspicious.
Listen, this is exactly. There's this low level, maybe high level sense of like paranoia about pretty much everything. You know, and it rears its ugly head, and like with Lucy Gray and some other situations, but it's just this undercurrent of people, if they're not actively out to get me, they are at least not interested in helping me. So that makes everybody an op. Like, he moves like everybody is an op.
Yeah. Which
is just an exhausting way to live. And then Maud Ivory whispers in his ear, don't let Billy around Sejanus because he's sweet and Billy feeds on sweet. Coriolanus.
I like that line, to be honest.
I do. Yeah, it's good. It's really good. Yeah. For what they're conveying there. Like, we all know people like that, people who are predators, but I like the way that that's phrased, that he feeds on sweet. Because, yeah, that's a real thing.
So the next part, they head home. They stop and gather fruit along the way. It's all very idyllic feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, when they get back to the house, he finds out that Sejanus has taken off for the Hob. So he goes and catches Sejanus mid-combo, and he breaks off and comes straight for Coriolanus instead of letting him hear what the conversation is, and claims that he's like looking for a pocket knife. And Coriolanus is like, well, you know, we haven't been paid yet. And Sejanus is like, yeah, you know, once we get paid. But Coriolanus is like ready to hit this guy in the face.
Yeah. And he stalks out of the Hob. He doesn't say anything to Maud or Tam. Just is like seething on his way back to the base.
He had to find out what Sejanus was mixed up in. Logic had failed to induce a confidence. Would intimacy work? It wouldn't hurt to try. A few blocks from the base, he laid a hand on Sejanus' shoulder, bringing them both to a stop. You know, Sejanus, I'm your friend. More than a friend, you're the closest thing I'll ever have to a brother, and there are special rules for family. If you need help, if you get into something you can't handle, I'm here. Tears welled up in Sejanus' eyes. Thank you, Corio. That means a lot. You may be the only person in the world who I actually trust. Trust again. The air was full of it. Come here. He pulled Sejanus into an embrace. Just promise not to do anything stupid, okay?
Wow.
It's so gross.
Wow. It really is.
I feel dirty just reading it.
Yeah. It's, knowing what we know about what Corio really feels about Sejanus, the fact that they have this moment where Sejanus is being so fucking transparent, so like open and vulnerable and thankful and grateful. And this fucking man is just a snake. Like, Coriolanus is just a fucking snake. And it is, like, it's funny, like, Maud is talking about how Billy Talk feeds on sweet, but, like, Coriolanus feeds on something, too, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we have the bit where Bug is real good at handling the birds, and Corio is like, the birds basically look at him and are like, it's on sight, and he just gets punctured instantly and has to be bandaged up and relegated to only birds in cages duty. And he goes up to one with a remote, and when Bug wouldn't participate, but when he grew bored, Coriolanus made them record silly phrases and sing bits of the anthem, seeing how many he could operate with one remote click. Up to 4 sometimes, if their cages were close together. He always took care to erase them by doing a final quick recording in which he was silent, ensuring his voice would not end up back at the Citadel lab. So...
I love this. On the whole, he was beginning to be weary of the infusion of music into his life. Invasion might be a better word. It seemed to be everywhere. Bird song, covey song, bird and covey song. Perhaps he did not share his mother's love of music after all. Yeah.
Yeah. It consumed his attention, demanding to be listened to and making it hard to think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is part of what appeals to me about it, but...
Same. Corey, he is not here for it, though. He's not interested in what it does to his brain, how it makes things fuzzy. Which, again, like, in music, you know, is a very emotional thing for most of us. And I'm assuming that when his emotions are triggered in that way, it overrides his, like, sort of critical thinking, his ability to be in control. And so he doesn't like what music stirs up in him, and he can't control it. He can't control his emotions, you know, when music is around. So it just decides that he doesn't want it, like, in his life, which to me is like the saddest way to live. If you're able to hear and enjoy music and you just opt out of it, but for why?
Right? I know that I've gone through a period where I wasn't listening to music because it evoked such intense emotion that I couldn't handle it or didn't want to handle it. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't quite feel like that with him. Like, I don't know. It might kind of be the same thing, though, because ultimately that was a control thing for me. You know? Yeah. So... here I am relating to Coriolanus Snow. Do not care for it. But then I did get those test results. So, so finally, they're next to a bird. Sejanus says, look, I got to tell you what I'm up to. I know you're not going to approve, but I feel like I owe you an explanation. And he presses record and turns Jesus around Christ. And Sejanus just tells him some of the rebels are leaving 12. They think there's people in 13. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
He says his hands acted on their own. Ooh, he wasn't aware he was doing it, you know, just like they had in the when he dropped the handkerchief into the tank of snakes. And he just does, yeah, he's wearing a bird wire. Bird on a wire. Isn't that, it's a movie, right? Bird on a Wire?
It's not ringing a bell for me, but I'm not really a movie buff.
I feel like that's a movie. Maybe not a good movie. Yep, 1990.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So Coriolanus just lets Sejanus talk. He explains they're going to be busing Lil out and take them with her. And he explains how he's going to like get through the guards and he doesn't plan to like really hurt anybody. And Coriolanus is just trying to like respond without actually speaking so it doesn't get picked up. And Sejanus isn't noticing anything weird. And I feel like with these birds, you really should notice when they just stop making noise because that's such a thing. But evidently does not occur to him. And I'll never forget what you did for me in the arena. I've got to figure out some way to let Ma know what happened to me and my father. Let him know the plinth name lives on, if only in obscurity. There it was, the plinth name. It was enough. His left hand found the remote, and he pressed the neutral button with his thumb.
Yep. I love this part. As Curio is trying not to speak so he doesn't get on the recording. At one moment, he like puts his head down into his hands and rubs his temples, and this show of being like so overwhelmed with this information he can't even formulate a sentence. Really, he's just trying to buy time. So yeah, he does the thing. He records his supposed best friend confessing to planning acts of treason. And I love that the person that comes in is Bug, which is weird because it's kind of like a play on words kind of. Oh
my God. I didn't even think of that. I don't like it. No, I reject it.
I don't think it's intentional. I'm hoping it's not intentional, but it made me laugh. So yeah, then Sejanus is talking. The other thing too about Sejanus is he is attempting the weird weed dream that Coriolanus had at the lake, right? Where Sejanus thinks he's going to escape into, like you said, 13, though they just keep saying going up north.
Yeah.
He's going to escape into this place where he will be free of district versus capital and not belonging, right? He's going to get to go someplace where he can just be a guy named Sejanus with like no baggage, no parental baggage, no where are you from baggage. It's such a fucking, I want to say it's a pipe dream, but I know that like 13 really does exist at this point. Like I know, even though I don't know what shape they're in this soon after the war, but this idea, this fantasy that Sejanus has, and how easy it was, because they haven't been in 12 very long. It's been a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Right? They haven't been paid yet. So it's like not even been a whole month. Like they have to wait a month before they get paid. Mm-hmm. So he just got here. And already I feel so bad for him.
I think all it took was him seeing the way that he was going to have to manage the district residents, and he was just like, I'm out.
I can't do this. I'm not built for this life. I don't know what I was thinking. Like, I can't do this. He's so desperate. And he's desperate in a way that mimics, in my opinion, what it's like to be in the Hunger Games to some extent. That sort of like, I'm trapped and there is like nowhere for me to go. And I'm being forced to participate in this thing, which for Sejanus is participating in like capital elitism and making his father proud and making all the right connections and then being forced to be a peacekeeper and all that. Like he's like a tribute. Sejanus is low key like a tribute also. Where he, even
though his parents moved explicitly to keep him from being one.
How about that?
Sucks to suck.
Really, honest to God. And this, and I appreciate the self-awareness that Sejanus has to understand there are lines he cannot cross. There's just things he can't do. And his back is like so up against the wall because he doesn't have really any other alternatives. And then some smooth talking Billy Talk comes along and, tells him, pie in the sky fantasy. And Sejanus is just like all in on day one.
Do you think it's pie in the sky? I feel like this might have worked if it weren't for Coriolanus.
I'm not. I think they could have gotten away. I'm not certain if they make it to District 13, and I'm not certain what Sejanus's life would be in 13, and whether or not he would be any happier there than he is anywhere else. Right? I don't know. So, like when I say pie in the sky, I mean this idea that there exists a place that you can go where you won't have any baggage. Because I don't believe Sejanus Plinth shows, he could make up a fake name, I guess, right? But
true.
I don't believe he shows up the son of one of the most powerful people in the capital, one of the wealthiest people in the capital, and the people in 13 don't try to figure out a way to exploit that to their advantage, especially because, again, I know it's like 70 years later or however many years later, but like we've met the people in 13 and we kind of see how they get down. You know what I mean? I don't like, he just wants to be free of like the puppet strings, and I don't know if that exists for him.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, a little bit.
Kind of makes him like Katniss in a way.
A little bit.
You know, just trying to get away from it and perpetually finding herself in another version of it. Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing, too, about these stories is that there are all these different versions of the games. You know, there's the, you know, it's so corny. I think it's somewhere it literally said in one of the books, like, the games never end, you know, but it's kind of true. It's kind of true. Like this dance, this sort of balancing act of how do you keep the populace controlled enough that you maintain your positions of power, and what do we have to do to make that happen is delicate and can be upended fairly easily. And then it forces the capital to respond with like harshness, like they have to come in with a heavy hammer, you know. And the capital doesn't, in my opinion, the capital doesn't really want to have to use a heavy hammer because they want to be like benevolent, and you can't be the benevolent benefactor if you're just like bombing shit all the fucking time, you know, and setting shit on fire all the fucking time. Like in the originals, it took Katniss really showing the capital up in order to provoke them into bombing 12. You know, like that wasn't how they weren't just out here willy-nilly bombing shit, but they would resort to it if they had to. And I forget where I was going with that, or where we started. I kind of went all over the place, but
we were talking about how the games never end.
Right. Yeah. This balance. And so like watching, like Sejanus is caught up in these games as everybody else is. And Snow, to his credit, and I hate to say that, I hate to give him credit for anything. It really just makes my skin crawl. To his credit, Coriolanus understands that and has made, whether he wants to admit it fully yet, if he's ready to admit it, he understands that the games never end, and he wants to make sure he's never the one, like, in the games. He's going to always be a game maker, right? He's never going to be a tribute.
Well,
boy, that's depressing.
To his credit, he makes sure he's not the victim, just somebody else. So Coriolanus is just like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And it's just like, you know, we know what he's going to do. So you just have to go through it with him, even though we're very much like, let's just get to the point here, bud. Coriolanus awoke after a few hours' sleep from a terrible dream. He'd been in the stands of the arena, looking down at Sejanus, who knelt beside Marcus's wrecked body. He was sprinkling it with breadcrumbs, unaware that a multicolored army of snakes was closing in on him from all sides. Coriolanus screamed at him over and over to get up, to run, but Sejanus didn't seem to hear. When the snakes reached him, he had plenty of screaming of his own to do. Guilt-ridden and slick with sweat, Coriolanus realized he had not thought through the ramifications of sending the Jabberjay. Sejanus could be in real trouble.
What did you think?
Literally.
What did you think was? Oh, he was just going to get reprimanded? He was going to get detention? A demerit? What did you think was going to fucking happen? Unreal.
It's just it's weird to me because like it feels like what we're supposed to be getting from this is that Coriolanus hasn't fully gone over to wanting to kill the guy, and that it's just him, like, you know, an error in judgment. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Coriolanus thinks through everything too much, if anything, you know, like, so for it to be sort of suggested in the way this is written of like, oh, he breathed a sigh of relief seeing that Sejanus was okay. I'm like,
yeah, I agree.
Why did he though?
I think that there's a thing it's happening, and I think that Suzanne Collins doesn't, like, because this is a prequel, we know like what he turns into and how it ends. She's trying to create like reasonable doubt. She's trying to she's trying to make it like we don't know who this is and that he could choose anything. Right?
Yeah.
Like we don't know who he is yet. So she's writing this in a way to like make us almost like we're supposed to believe for a second that he wasn't fully aware of what he was doing. That, you know, like, because that's like the tension that a story needs. You can't just know everything about the character. You know what I mean? So she's trying to create that, but I don't know. She's good with the whiplash of Coriolanus, but it's because it's the same whiplash over and over and over again. It gets, in my opinion, it's gotten tedious.
Yes.
You know?
That's the exact word that I use. Yeah. In my head, I mean.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm in your head.
But yeah, I like that. By the end of the book, I really did sort of feel like this was drawn out so much. It wasn't enough for a whole book. You had to repeat so many things in order to bring this length out.
Yeah. And
I don't feel like that helps the story in any real way.
She should have done a collection of like little novellas of like a little Haymitch story, a little Snow story, maybe a little Tigress story. You know, because I like, as fascinated as I am about Haymitch, I'm wondering if I'm going to have the same challenges when we get around to reading that, you know.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. We'll have to see how she handles it, I guess. But yeah, I agree. This didn't need to be as long as it turned out to be. Especially considering the amount of time of his life that's being covered is like a matter of months.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, eventually, the thought soothed him until he realized in that case he was back to square one and in great danger for knowing about the rebel plan. Didn't these people understand that the whole system would collapse without the capital's control? It made him hope the Jabberjay delivered its message after all. But if the capital officials did by chance hear Sejanus' confession, what would they do to him? Would buying rebel guns to use against the peacekeepers be cause for execution? No, wait, he hadn't recorded anything about the illegal guns, only the part about Sejanus stealing the peacekeeper. But that was bad enough. Maybe he was doing Sejanus a favor. Fuck sake. So finally, he climbs down in the morning from his bunk and gets through the day, and nothing seems to be wrong. They're doing all right.
He convinces himself, I'm sorry to interrupt, I just want to mention.
No, it's fine.
He convinces himself that the most likely scenario is that Sejanus' father is just going to buy Sejanus out of this pickle. And it's going to be fine. He's going to end up with a desk job. No. But he tells himself that he's going to end up with a desk job at his father's empire and miserable but alive. And most importantly, someone else's problem.
I do think that he isn't being honest with himself here. I don't think he believes this.
I agree.
You know, like...
Yeah. But that's his, like, last sort of, like, the way he ends this conversation that he's having with himself about, like, what would happen. Will he be executed? Will he have prison time? The way he terminates this cycle of thinking is, you know, his father's going to take care of it. It'll be fine. It won't be anything that serious.
Yeah.
And then he starts wondering, I wonder what Lucy Gray would think about what I just fucking did.
I don't think you need to wonder, my man.
I think you know.
So he gets a letter from Tigress. Prospective buyers and a lot of nosy people had been touring the Snows' apartment. They'd received 2 offers, both far below the amount they'd need to move into the most modest apartments Tigress had seen. The visitors distressed the grandmam, who camped among her rose bushes in a great show of denial when they appeared. However, she overheard one couple who were inspecting the roof discussing how they could replace her beloved garden with a goldfish pond. The idea that the roses, the very symbol of the Snow dynasty, were to be demolished precipitated her downward spiral into even greater agitation and confusion. Aww. It was worrisome to leave her alone now. Tigress was at her wit's end and asking for advice, but what advice could he give? He had failed them in every possible way and could think of no road out of their despair. By Saturday, he almost looked forward to confronting Sejanus. So
he hoped it would come to blows.
Hob, right?
Someone should pay for the indignities of the Snow family, and who better than a plinth? Y'all, this man.
Sir. Sir. As they were leaving the barracks, they got roped into an extra detail by Cookie and spent half an hour unloading a hovercraft full of crates. "You'll be glad about it next weekend, Commander's birthday party," he said, and slipped them a quart bottle of what turned out to be cheap whiskey. It was a big improvement over the local brew. When they arrived at the Hob, they barely had time to grab some crates and squeeze into a spot against the back wall before Maud Ivory danced on stage to introduce the covey. So we get a new song, and it's all about, like, you lying to me and the way that we'll betray each other to get through life. And it's just really on point, honestly. Coriolanus paused in the shadows at the back of the Hob as he watched Sejanus hurry through the open door of the shed. All 5 of the covey were on stage, so who would he be looking for? Was this a prearranged meeting to lock down their escape plans? So he sees Sejanus talking to someone. It's a woman, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Who is it that he sees with her? I'm trying to get this.
I think it's the same woman that Snow had
from
walked
the Hob.
Up. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we don't actually get a name.
Yeah, it's the same woman from the Hob. It says it's no name. The one Sejanus has supposedly been seeing about a pocket knife.
Okay.
And Snow sees her coming out of a door with a bunch of bills that she's shoving down in her pocket. And he's just like, oh, okay. I see what's going on here.
So he goes out there and he gets a gun pulled on him. And unfortunately, Lucy Gray walks into this whole thing without noticing until it's too late. Mm-hmm. Sejanus comes in and is just like, no, don't hurt them. They're both with me. And the dude's name's Spruce, and he's like, well, why are they with you? This isn't supposed to be how it worked. This is us two. And Sejanus says, well, he's like my brother. He's going to cover for us. And Coriolanus is like, what?
I don't recall agreeing to that whatsoever.
That wasn't even mentioned, but sure. And
Spruce is like pointing his gun at Lucy, like, okay, so what about her? And Billy is like, I told you about her. She's coming with us. She's my girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then Coriolanus says he could feel Lucy clench his arm, then drop it, and she says, if you'll take me.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
And it's like, he knows, he says it immediately, she lied to defuse the moment, obviously. But he, like, can't fucking just believe that. You know? So, eventually, there's a woman's voice that catches all of their attention, because there's a second door. And guns, ammo mocked the voice. You can't make more of that, can you, up north? The nastiness helped Coriolanus place it from the night of the brawl in the hob. It's Mayfair Lip, the mayor's daughter. Trailing after Billy Tope like a hound in heat, said Lucy Gray under her breath. Always keep that last bullet somewhere safe so as you can blow your brains out before they catch you, said Mayfair. Ouch, Mayfair. Goodness.
She's salty as fuck.
Very much so.
Billy is like, go home. I'll tell you later. It's not how you sounded. And
Mayfair Lip is also such a terrible name. I had been thinking Mayfair was her last name, but it's not.
Funny.
And it's just much worse than I expected.
And the Spruce is like, nah, come on in here, Mayfair. Join us. We got no fight with you. You can't choose who your dad is. And Janus is just like, we're not going to hurt you. And Mayfair is like, of fucking course you won't. And this guy Spruce, who we just meet, who's the one with the gun, is just like, what the fuck is going on right now? Because none of this shit has anything to do, right, with him and his plan.
This is not on plan at all. So she's like backing away. She's clearly going to go run tell on them. And Spruce is about to shoot her. Billy Tope stops him, but Coriolanus does it. He actually shoots her. And Billy is just like, what did you do? And I'm like, sir, what did you think she was going to do? He's like saved your ass, honestly, right now. Mm-hmm. This was it for you. What do you not understand about that?
Yep. And Lucy starts to freak out, and Coriolanus takes like control of the scene, which is like what we know he can do. Mm-hmm. And he tells Lucy, "You get back on stage right now, because that's your fucking alibi. When all this shit comes to light, everybody needs to be like, no, the Cubby were on stage all night."
Yeah.
And then, Billy Tope says, no, about Lucy Gray getting on stage. If I swing, she's swinging with me, which is a wild fucking thing to say.
Yeah.
And without hesitation, Spruce shoots Billy right through the chest. So we got two bodies hitting the floor.
Mm-hmm. I love it because it's Spruce just turning on somebody who was allegedly on his own side. The instant he hears him be like, well, then she's going down with me, because it's a very fatalistic thing to say.
Yep.
That's not you trying to get out of this or fix this. It's you acting like, well, I'm just giving up now.
Not only that, but if Billy and Spruce are in cahoots and Spruce sees how quick Billy turns and is like, if I go down, you're going down. Why would Spruce want to be in
True
anything
enough.
with him? Like, nah, we're done. We're definitely fucking done. So yeah, he shoots him like expeditiously, and everybody is just standing around like, ooh, this really escalated.
Meanwhile, the folks inside the hob, they're not hearing it because the music is really loud and they've got a huge sing-along going on.
They are singing Sunny Side of Life.
I swear to God.
I'm sorry.
This whole thing is so like...
oh my God.
What about you two? The same, obviously, said Coriolanus. Him too, I'll make sure. You might think about coming with us. Someone's going to pay for this, said Spruce. Coriolanus fumbled forward until he found Sejanus and pulled him out after Spruce. He forced Mayfair's body into the shed with his boot and firmly closed the door on the murder scene with his shoulder. There, he'd successfully made it in and out of the shed without touching anything else with his skin, except the gun he'd kill Mayfair with, no doubt covered in his fingerprints and DNA. But Spruce would take that when he left District 12, never to return. The last thing he needed was a repeat of the handkerchief scenario, which that is very funny.
Do you hear that, Coriolanus? It's the sound of snow falling. He remembers Dean Highbottom saying to him. And
they just sneak back in and pretend they were there the whole time.
Yep. And Coriolanus is just telling Sejanus, like, not a fucking word. You sit down and you pretend like you've been here all night, like you've been drinking and enjoying the music. And then it just goes on like that for a bit. Like they finished the show. The Covey finished performing. Ugh.
And she makes sure to choose a number where all the Covey are needed for backup singing so that everybody is there. And Coriolanus is just like, we don't know anything and we are heading straight the fuck back. And Sejanus is like, okay, well, what about everybody else? And Coriolanus is basically like, fuck everybody else. Spruce is gone. Lucy we can trust. She's not going to say shit. And the others are dead. Spend the day on the base tomorrow. Yes, day on the base. Sejanus seemed distracted to the point of incoherence. Coriolanus grasped his face between his hands. Sejanus, this is life or death. You have to hold it together. Sejanus agreed, but Coriolanus knew he didn't sleep a wink after that. Which, yeah. This whole thing, he just spends the night for himself, trying to justify why what he did wasn't actually murder, just self-defense.
Yeah. This is the second time he's killed somebody now.
Mm-hmm.
And
second and third. Well, I guess Spruce killed the other one.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay.
So yeah, you're right.
And he's just like, okay, well, Bobbin was self-defense, but like, what the fuck was what happened with Mayfair? And he's like, it's not premeditated. It's not even murder at all, really. It was just another type of self-defense. The law might not see it that way, but he did.
Yeah.
She may not have had a knife, but she had the power to get him hung. Not to mention what she do to Lucy Gray. So yeah, this is a justified killing as far as he's concerned, because she was about to run out the door and blow up the whole spot. And as much as it pains me, he's not entirely wrong. Right?
You know?
Right?
Yeah. I do see it. So eventually we get the news coming back of what they found and what the people's reactions have been, what the assumptions are. And it seems that they think it's somebody, from 12. The commander locks down the whole base for the day, and Coriolanus is feeling pretty good about things. Like he thinks we covered our tracks fairly well. But he asks Sejanus about the escape plan, and Sejanus is like, I don't know if that's still happening. Like, we were supposed to go on the commander's birthday, but like, they're looking for the murderer. What if they just arrest an innocent person? And Coriolanus says, then our troubles are over. But he says out loud, it's highly unlikely, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. By Tuesday afternoon, the interest in the murders had died down to the extent that Coriolanus began to make plans for the future as he peeled potatoes for the next day's breakfast.
This guy is the Lulu.
Yeah, he is, though. The first thing was to ensure Sejanus had given up on the escape plan. He checked the mail and found a box from Pluribus loaded with packets of strings for assorted musical instruments and a kind note saying there was no charge. He put them in his locker, happy at the thought of how happy the Covey would be when it was safe enough to see them again. Coriolanus began to feel like his old self as he headed to the mess hall. Tuesday meant hash. He had a few extra minutes and went to pick up another can of powder for his rash. But as he came out of the clinic, a base ambulance pulled up. The back doors swung open, and two medics pulled a man on a stretcher from the back. His blood-soaked shirt suggested he might be dead, but as they carried him inside, he turned his head. A pair of gray eyes landed on Coriolanus, who could not suppress a gasp. Spruce. Then the doors swung shut, blocking him from view.
Yep.
And this is about as bad news as you could get.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah, this guy is supposed to be in the wind with that fucking gun, and no other witnesses are supposed to be around. And now they've got a witness in their custody who can put both Sejanus and Coriolanus at the scene of the crime. If he's got the weapon still on him, they can fingerprints, all that shit. And he is freaking out. And the next morning for breakfast, the kid Smiley has got a nurse that he deals with. And he finds out that Spruce has died from his injuries overnight. But, oh wait, is he asking? No, she let him know he died from his wound, so it did happen. She didn't know for certain, but that most people thought he'd been involved with the murders. And that's pretty much all she has to offer. Mm-hmm. And Coriolanus just spends the rest of the day waiting for, like, the shoe to drop. Like, it's coming. It's coming.
But when they show up, they only show up for Sejanus. And him and his friends try and do the, like, well, he was with us all night. But the sergeant is like, I don't think he's been arrested because of the murders. I think this is something else. Mm-hmm. And Coriolanus is like, oh, shit. The next 2 days, everything seemed to tumble forward. I really liked the way that's phrased.
Yeah.
As he tried to reassure himself that this was in Sejanus' best interest, as the bunkmates pleased to see their friend were denied, as the detention stretched on. He kept waiting for Strabo Plinth to descend in a private hovercraft, negotiate a discharge, offer to upgrade the entire air fleet for free, and whisk his errant son back home. But did his father even know about Sejanus' predicament? This wasn't the academy where they called your parents if you messed up. So Corio asks, are we allowed to, like, call home? And they are allowed twice a year. Only once after your 6 months are up. And everything else is by mail. So Coriolanus writes a note to Ma and saying maybe your husband ought to do some, networking. That's all I'm saying.
Make a call or two.
Then the commander informed them one of their own was to be hanged for treason that afternoon. Sejanus Plinth.
That was fucking so surreal, afternoon.
Like a waking nightmare. Yeah.
How is it surreal and like a waking nightmare when you literally did this?
You did this,
You
sir.
did this. You did this.
And afterward, you even said, I hope they fucking got it too. Like, come now.
Yeah. So they have drill practice that he can barely even make it through. The sergeant calls him forward, and Coriolanus is given an order to attend the hanging like he did for Arlo. Yeah. Which feels, I don't know. He says here, the other peacekeepers, none of whom he knew by name, gave him a wide berth in the truck bed. He was certain he tainted by association. Yeah.
I don't think that's what it is, personally. I think they knew the two of them were best buds. And that
didn't
he's
know what
going
to
to be
say.
fucked up.
Yeah. They don't even know what to say to him. I think you're right. I think it's more of like, yeah, like, what the fuck do we say to this guy? This is terrible. Like, it's so awkward and uncomfortable. I'll just avoid him. Yeah.
So they drag out Sejanus and Lil in chains. And Lil, her shaking legs, unable to bear her weight, was hauled forward by a pair of grim-faced peacekeepers who would probably spend the following night trying to obliterate this memory with white liquor. And I do sort of like that acknowledgement that, like, these people are doing this and they're not enjoying this.
Yeah.
They don't want this, this is as awful for them in a different way as it is for the people who are dying.
That's a nice touch, because, sometimes the jailers, they do enjoy it. They are fucking sadists and they get pleasure out of it. And it's nice to have a little line here to suggest that these men, this is not something they want to do, and it's not a memory they want to hold. They want to like black out as soon as they can. Yeah.
So Coriolanus makes eye contact with Sejanus. All he could see was the 8-year-old boy on the playground, the bag of gumdrops clenched in his fist. Only this boy was much, much more frightened. Sejanus' lips formed his name, Corio, and his face contorted in pain. But whether it was a plea for help or an accusation of his betrayal, he couldn't tell. I really want to know.
Yeah, me too.
I really want to know, did Sejanus go to the gallows thinking Corio was his friend the whole time? A part of me wants him to have not known. A part of me wants him to just die, like, thinking that he had at least one friend.
Yeah. It's like unimaginable to think of the alternative.
Yeah.
To know that the one person you thought was your friend that was like your brother that you trusted with your fucking shenanigans. Because these are shenanigans that Sejanus has been involved in.
They are indeed.
To find out that that's who betrayed you. And I mean, it's very possible that they really, like, I don't know how the bird thing works, but, like, I don't know if they would have sent the recording back to District 12, because the birds are back at the Capitol. Like, they've all left.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the thought of Sejanus sitting in a room and having that recording playing for him, he would know immediately what must have happened. And the shock of that, it's just too terrible to even imagine.
Yeah.
As much as I lean towards, like, people should know who people really are, I hope that Sejanus didn't know. I hope that whatever evidence they presented about the escape plan, they just pretended like they got it from Spruce, or didn't reveal their source, or whatever.
Yeah. So Lucy Gray turns up at this point and is looking really flipped out and crying. As the drum roll began, Coriolanus squeezed his eyes shut, wishing he could block out the sound as well, but he could not, and he heard it all. Sejanus' cry, the bang of the trap doors, and the Jabberjays picking up Sejanus' last words, screaming it over and over into the dazzling sun. Ma! Ma! Ma!
That was awful. Yeah.
She really knows how to take things to another level. Him just being hanged is already plenty horrible. We could just have it be that. But no, we're going to have this repeating our fucking last words here. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And the thought of a young man crying for his mother, Yeah. What a despicable person Coriolanus Snow really is.
He really is.
In these moments of, like, pettiness and smallness, that he could do something so out of bounds, so out of line,
Yeah.
and feel justified in doing it, and then to try to make himself feel better, tell himself stories and lies about how there aren't going to be treacherous or, horrendous consequences to his actions, that somehow Sejanus would be okay despite what Coriolanus has done. I don't know, just, gross.
Yeah.
Just fucking gross. And the feeling sick. I don't, I'm assuming there's some guilt in there too, but, like, none of this is this is who he is, right? This is who he is.
I feel like it is. I feel like it wasn't entirely who he was, and then he made enough choices that now it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. This is who he is now. And I'm very curious about we have one chapter and an epilogue, I believe, right? So I'm really curious what the fallout of this will be regarding like him and Lucy Gray, for instance. Because there's definitely going to be fallout. Maybe he turns his back on her completely. Maybe he tells her what he did. Even though I don't see him. Well, you know what? I was going to say I don't see him admitting that he did this, but he can be so certain that he's on the right side of his actions that he might just say it. But I would really hope not, because he acknowledges earlier that Lucy would hate him if she knew. So I feel like he's got to have that awareness. He can't possibly tell her the truth on purpose. So maybe it slips out some way, or maybe he gets drunk and spills the beans. I don't know. But if she finds out he did this, there's like no coming back from that, in my opinion. She's done.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I don't have a good theory yet. I don't know how it's going to play out. But as far as her figuring out or finding out, but that's it. That's a wrap on whatever romance was brewing between these two individuals. Like that's a wrap on that. And I think that Snow will, if he's rejected by Lucy or if he rejects her, he's like going to just lean in to being this person now. Like he's going to just lean into it and become successful at it, because we know he ends up becoming successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what a heart-wrenching last line. Those damn birds.
And the fact that he like had just wrote to her and this is happening immediately after, I don't know if the letter winds up going out. So she's going to get that and maybe think there's still something she can do, and then find out he's dead already by the time she got it. Like, that is just awful. And his father, this was the last chance, getting him to be a peacekeeper was like a really, it was them being very lenient with him, considering the extent of what he was being accused of at the time.
Yep.
So
it cost his father a great deal in calling in favors, in actual money, in networking. His poor mom.
I know.
Poor Ma Plinth.
She's the one I really feel bad for.
And to think that she held Coriolanus in such high esteem as well, really thought that this was a friend to her son, a friend to her family. And he was just using them, ultimately. Yeah. Just using them. But
will
making
she
it
know that?
Oh God, I want her to know. I want her to know. I don't think it really matters, but I want her to know. Because I want them to destroy Snow. I know that doesn't happen, but to go through, like, say she doesn't know. Say they never find out, right? And Snow moves up in power, and the Plinths, or I don't know if they're disgraced publicly and maybe they leave the capital, but say they don't, and Snow rises in power, and they look at Snow. He was such a good friend to our boy. For the rest of their lives, they look at him and go, he was so good to our son. Oh, Jesus. Terrible. That's like my worst, like, not my worst fear, but like it is a fear of like really, really misjudging someone's character and thinking that someone is really a friend of mine, and then they are absolutely not. Like, that is such a terrifying proposition. Because when you open yourself up for friendship, what you believe is a friendship, in order to have one, you have to be vulnerable and open. And to be doing that with someone who you think is reciprocating it and they're not, it just gives me like the makes my skin crawl. It does. It makes my skin crawl. It's so, yeah. It's just an awful, awful feeling. And this is just like to such an extreme, where he has turned in his friend. Like, he signed his death warrant.
Yeah. And really seemed to think that wasn't what he was doing. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the part I keep running up against, is this willful ignorance.
Yep.
And come now, sir.
Yep.
Please.
This way that he views his whole friendship with Sejanus as being a burden that Snow is somehow forced to bear. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like an albatross around his neck. This Sejanus friendship is just really weighing me down. But he benefited so much from it, you know, between, it just, yeah, he's a narcissist and, a sociopath and all the other, you know, terrible personality hiccups that occur.
Feels very generous, but sure. Yeah. It's just, I've said this already, but we go into this pretty much knowing that Sejanus is going to be betrayed by him. Mm-hmm. Like, there's just not really another way that a sweet little cinnamon roll like him is it's gonna turn out when he is around a person like Snow.
Yep.
But it is so frustrating that the way he is betrayed isn't even with actual malice. It's not even like, something that I can just be like, you went into this seeking his death, and so I can judge you for wanting him dead. It's this like really limp sort of, I didn't mean for that to happen. And there's something about that that's even more despicable somehow. Like, if you're sending somebody to die and you stand by that,
you say it with your whole chest.
At least, But it's just
some wishy-washy.
Yeah.
Things got out of control. Like, I didn't mean for all of this bad stuff to happen when I did that fucked up thing I did. You know, things just kind of got out of hand. Yeah. What a piece of shit.
Ultimately, that is indeed what it comes down to.
It really does. So, yeah. 2 more chapters, or a chapter and an epilogue left, and that's it, guys. That's it.
Yeah, I wanted to be sure to leave some room for discussion at the end of things, because the way that this book wraps leaves to me like a fair number of questions. And I am very, very interested to hear your interpretation. So that is something that I am looking forward to.
Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, you know what? I'm going to say hi to some new patrons, because I feel like I haven't done that in a while. And also, I should have started the episode with this, but everybody who donated to help get me a new computer, thank you so, so much for doing that. Like, I reached goal incredibly quickly, as I always do with this community. I have reached out to you guys many times, and everybody always comes through, and it's honestly really remarkable. And if you are interested in all the details about it, I posted a very long and overly detailed post on the Patreon and also in the Facebook group. So you can go there and see like what went wrong, what I was told about what I should do. And I am ultimately going to be replacing this computer, which I was able to like get working again by once again wiping the disk. Very tedious to be doing this over and over again, but here we are. But it's like on its last legs. So it's only going to be usable for so much longer because I'm putting it through its paces more than it was prepared for power wise. And it's causing it to wear down quite quickly. So just thank you guys again so much. And I am this weekend, by the time this comes out, it'll be too late, but I will post a reminder tomorrow morning as well on all of the socials. But tomorrow night, Rashawn and I are going to be hosting a open Unsober episode that is available to everybody to come join us as a thank you for the donations. So you can all hang out and listen to us talk about God knows what, probably just wine for a good portion of it, at least in my case.
I thought we were doing an AMA.
I mean, we can and we will, but are you trying to tell me that in an AMA, it's not going to turn into whining, at least true. On my part?
Oh, I didn't know that's the kind of wine you meant.
Oh my God. Did you really think I meant like, oh my God.
I was like, I'm not prepared to have That makes much more sense. There we go. Okay, I'm back on board.
That is hilarious. All right, everybody. I'm going to say hi really quickly to our one new patron that we have gotten since the last time we did this, and it is Rachel.
Welcome.
Yay! Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate you so much. I really wish that there had been some air horns in the Hunger Games. I would have kicked it up a notch. But thank you, Rachel, so much for pledging. Appreciate you very, very much. If you're interested in supporting us, please go to patreon.com/unspoiled and you can pledge at a variety of levels. And yeah, just getting back on track after missing some recordings. So glad to be back. All right, everybody, until the final episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
Are you coming to the tree where dead man called out for his love to flee? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.